Hello and welcome back to Pin My Podfic. This is the reading of Chapter 5, the Between Ghosts and Promises, Part 3, from After the Fall by Innocent with _reader. And this will, not only Part 3, this is going to be Part 3 and 4. Sorry, my fault. Anyways, now let's get on with finishing this chapter. Part 3, POV, Midoriya Zuko. The silence of the Batcave was broken only by the constant hum of the electronics and the faint clicking of keys being pressed. Midoriya Zuko sat before one of the secondary terminals, eyes fixed on the multiple screens sliding past his hands, trembling slightly over the keyboard. Rowan had given him restricted access to the files, not total, but enough for him to understand the world he had fallen into. "You can use the console," Dick had said before moving off to help Wally with communications. "Just try not to hack all of Gotham, okay?" Midoriya had managed a faint smile, but now, staring at the slowly rotating insignia of the Justice League on the screen, the smile was gone. He pressed enter. File. Justice League history. Images began to flash by. Superman lifting a car as if it were made of paper, Wonder Woman standing before an army, her golden lasso shining like a sun in the middle of a storm, Green Lantern shaping constructs of energy to shield willpower, and finally, Batman, the shadow among gods, charging against an enemy who towered over him without a moment's hesitation. Midoriya held his breath. The images were different, but familiar. In Mustafa, he had grown up watching videos of pro heroes in action. All Might smiling even with a battered body, Endeavor standing against hordes of villains, Eraserhead protecting his students even when exhausted. But here, the impossible was routine. He clicked to advance. The images changed. Now they were wars, alien invasions, massive shadowy creatures that looked torn straight out of a nightmare. Heroes fighting side by side, falling, rising again, until the screen flickered. The most recent file opened on its own, as if it wanted to be seen. Extinction event. Alien invasion. Midoriya hesitated. Then he clicked. The display filled with raw footage, Metropolis in flames, the sea rising over Themyscira, a fleet of black ships blotting out the sky, spewing beams of light that devoured everything. Death came like a clean cut. No time for heroes or civilians to react. He saw Superman struck by multiple energy beams, his red cape burning in the air before his body vanished into the light. He saw Wonder Woman's sword shatter against one of the invaders before she was swallowed by an explosion. He saw Giovanni Zatara raising a massive magical shield to protect civilians, only to be obliterated along with the spell when the sky broke apart. And at the end, he saw Batman, surrounded by fire and smoke, casting one last look at the drone camera before disappearing into the wreckage. Midoriya clenched his fist on the table, his chest tightening. They had lost. What he wasn't just the death of individuals. It wasn't the death of pillars, of beacons that held on an entire world together. He blinked several times, trying to push away the image of Giovanni Zatara consumed by the light. The man wasn't just a magician. He was a father to someone still out there, alive, carrying that weight. The silence of the Batcave now felt like a distant echo of the roar in those recordings. The screens showed heroes surrounded by crowds, backed by comrades fighting together. And yet, what remained now were a handful of survivors, scattered hidden, speaking through barrier transmissions. It was like going from a packed stadium to an empty hallway. In Mustafa, Midoriya knew that if he called, someone would answer, a pro hero, a classmate, someone willing to fight. But here he realized there might be no one left to answer the call except those in the cave with him right now. He saw himself in the footage, a green blur tearing through the mothership with raw fury. I was there. But now, he glanced away at the pale reflection in the monitor beside him. What am I here? An intruder? An accident? He wanted answers, but he wasn't sure if he had the strength to look for them. That's when the memory came. Not of the battle, not of a war cry, but of a quiet night on the dormitory dorm balcony at UA, when the wind carried the scent of the sleeping city. All Might, already in his weakened form, leaned on the railing, gazing at the horizon, as if searching for something beyond the distant lights. "Midoriya," he said again, that deep voice tinged with an unusual softness. Being a hero isn't about always winning, or about saving the whole world all at once. He paused as if weighing every world. It's about standing up every time the challenge is in front of you, even when everything seems lost. Back then, Midori hadn't fully understood the weight of those words. But now, sitting in a cave that had once been the command center of the world's greatest detective, surrounded by echoes of a past that wouldn't return, he felt the meaning of every syllable. It was as if All Might was standing there in the dark, telling him that no matter how much the world fell apart, the responsibility to rise was still his. He closed his eyes, took a deep breath. When he opened them again, he saw the Justice League insignia differently. Not just as a symbol of what was lost, but as a symbol of what could be rebuilt. The soft click of footsteps echoed through the cave. Dick appeared beside him with two mugs, the smell of hot coffee mixing with the cave's cold air. "How you holding up?" he said, offering one. Midoriya took it, hesitant. "Still trying to figure out who I am here." Dick let out a short, tired laugh. "Yeah, welcome to the club." He took a sip of his coffee, grimacing slightly at the strong taste. "You know, I'm not officially part of the league. Never was." Midoriya's eyebrows rose. "But you're Robin." "Yeah, but that doesn't give me super strength, X-ray vision, or a flying cave." He rested the mug on his knee. "I was just the Batman's kid, trainee, and Batman trained me to never fail. That's a lot, that's a lot for anyone, especially when you're, I don't know, 13 and should still be playing video games." I stared at the screen in front of him. I inherit something too. A huge power from someone I admire more than anyone, but deep down I've always wondered if I was the right guy for it. Dick let out a short breath, almost a laugh. "Okay, that's two things we have in common." For a few seconds, only the hum of the monitors filled the space. Dick swirled the coffee in his cup, staring into it as if searching for an answer inside. "The truth," he continued, "I don't think anyone ever feels ready, but if we wait until we are, the world will already be gone." Midoriya looked up. "So, how do we keep going?" "We don't keep going because because of a symbol," Dick shrugged. "Like it was the most obvious thing in the world. We keep going because someone has to, and because we notice it or not, we don't know how to stop." Midoriya blinked, a small smile forming. "Too stubborn to quit." Dick returned the smile. "Yeah, and a little stupid too." They both laughed quietly, the sound echoing softly through the cavernous space. Midoriya leaned back in his chair, turning his gaze back to the league insignia on the screen. Before, it had looked like an epitaph. Now, it felt like a starting point. Dick downed the rest of his coffee in one gulp, set the cup on the table, and stood up. "So, Deku," he said the nickname naturally, as if it had already been part of it had already been part of the team for years. "Welcome to the mess." Midoriya looked up at him. What's hope to rebuild? For real. Dick didn't answer right away. He simply extended his hand, not like a formal leader, but like someone saying, "Alright, we're in this together." Midoriya looked at the hand for a moment, feeling the weight of it. It was strangely similar to the day All Might had offered him his power. Only now, there was no promise of invincible strength, just the promise that he wouldn't fight alone. He shook it. The gesture wasn't long, nor dramatic, but it carried a quiet strength. There in the cold, empty heart of the Batcave, a boy from Gotham and a hero from another world made an agreement that needed no oaths. It wasn't about inheriting perfect legacies. It was about building something new from the ashes. Now moving on to part 4. Gosh, this is getting a bit brighter, I guess. Part 4. The silence before the meal wasn't uncomfortable, but it carried the particular weight of people trying to get used to living after a war. The improvised electric stove crackled softly, and the steam escaping from the pot mixed with the cold air of the Batcave, creating a thin mist that danced under the thin light of the lamps. In the background, the distant echo of water drooping into the cracks of the walls, it was a reminder that this place was, in the end, just a cave shaped by the hand of someone stubborn. Dick stirred the stew with almost methodical focus, as if cooking was just another mission to complete. Beside him, Molly cut the stale bread with quick movements, though his expression betrayed a certain weariness in his eyes. Midoriya watched them, and something about that scene, so simple, so mundane, held him in place. They weren't superheroes in that moment. They weren't survivors from different worlds. They were just 3 boys trying to create a little bit of normalcy amidst cold concrete and electrical bat cables. It was comforting, and at the same time painful. It's not much, but it'll do, Dick said, serving the stew into 3 metal bowls. Man, you should have let me handle this. I'm the master of microwave cuisine. Wally teased, taking his bowl with a tired smile. Wally, cooking in the microwave doesn't count if you burn half of what you heat up, Vic replied, raising an eyebrow. Midoriya let out a restrained laugh, surprised at himself for still being able to laugh. We sat around one of the central tables, pushing aside equipment and crumbled papers, turning the heart of the Batcave into an improvised dining table. So, Wally began between spoonfuls. You also started young in this hero life, right? I mean, you mentioned earlier about that school UA, wasn't it? Midoriya nodded, blowing the hot broth. Yeah, it's where we train to become heroes. I had friends there. Uraraka, Ira, Todoroki. Wally shook his head, clearly impressed. School just for heroes still sounds amazing to me, he said with a crooked smile. Although, knowing my luck, I'd probably end up in detention on the very first day. Dick, with a discreet smile, added, I started as Batman's partner. I was 9 years old when I first wore this suit. Sounds crazy now. Midoriya looked up, curious. What was it like, being trained by him? Dick shrugged, glancing at his worn gloves. Strict, demanding, but fair. Batman always knew how to draw out what I didn't think I had. The R on the chest, he said, it was to remind me I didn't need to be his shadow. That I was Robin, with my own light. Midoriya smiled in admiration. Wally leaned in, nudging Dick's shoulder. You're forgetting to say the uniform had green shorts and a yellow cape. I thought it was awful. I was a kid, Wally, Dick replied, laughing. Wally pointed his spoon at Midoriya. Speaking of outfits, that hood of yours with the ears is kind of unusual, don't you think? Midoriya's eyes widened in surprise. Hey, I like it. It's a symbol for me. It was meant to be inspired by my mentor. Leave it alone, Wally, Dick said, raising his hand amused. We all had embarrassing costumes. Mine was way too colorful, and those little shorts didn't help, but Bruce said the colors were a target. He wanted enemies to look at me, not him. Midoriya grew thoughtful. In my world, most people are born with powers. We call them quirks, but being a hero, it's not just about having a power. It's a choice. You decide how much you're willing to sacrifice. The tone of the conversation shifted, growing heavier. Wally set his spoon down in the bowl, staring at the table. Yeah, sacrifice. We know that well. Dick stayed silent, his gaze fixed on the shadow the lamp cast over the table for a moment. All the laughter was gone, and the weight of what they had lost hung in the air. Midoriya spoke, quieter this time. In my world, being a hero is a profession, but even with powers, not everyone chooses to fight because fighting means losing friends, family, parts of yourself. Dick looked at him as he saw not just a survivor, but someone who, despite his youth, understood the pain they carried. Wally lifted his head, breaking the silence with a crooked smile. I guess that makes us three idiots to choose to fight anyway, huh? Midoriya smiled without answering. He looked at his hands, clenching them into fists, remembering All Might's words. Put on a smile and keep moving forward. I promise, he said firmly, looking at both of them. I'll help you with everything I have, no matter what happens. Dick straightened, resting his elbows on the table. Then that makes three of us, he said, extending his hand toward Midoriya. Midoriya shook it firmly, feeling a different weight in the gesture. It wasn't just promise, it was a pact. Wally, without ceremony, threw a hand over both their shoulders. If we're going to rebuild the world, we're going to do it our way. And fair warning, you're stuck with me. The three of them laughed, short but genuine. The cold vastness of the Batcave surrounded by ghosts and laws. Three young men from different worlds and different times had just forged a new alliance. It wasn't just a league. Was it a new team? Was it something simpler, maybe stronger? And it was a beginning. Shared POV. At that moment, none of them really understood that what they were sealing, but it was just a simple meal. A handshake, a joke, to cut the weight of the moment. But in the absence of everything they had once known, small gestures took on the weight of eternal promises. Midoriya could feel the steady grip of Dick's hand, and for a moment he saw the reflection of All Might in his eyes, not through physical strength, but through silent conviction. When Dick looked at Midoriya, he recognized something he knew well: the stubborn will to keep going, even when there was no one left to lead the way. And Wally, despite his easygoing demeanor, knew that the hands gripping his own were the same hands that had once carried worlds on their shoulders. There were no perfect uniforms here, no untouchable symbols, no infallible leaders. Just three kids who had lost too much, but still refused to give up. Maybe this was what Batman had meant years ago when he told him Robin didn't need to be anyone's shadow. Maybe this was what All Might had tried to teach Midoriya when he said a smile was a hero's first line of defense. Maybe this was what Wally had always believed, even if he never put it into words, that running alone meant nothing if there wasn't someone waiting at the finish line. When they let go of each other's hand, there was something different in the air. The backyard was still so cold and silent, but it didn't feel as empty. The hum of the computers and the faint drip of water now sounded like the slow rhythm of a heartbeat, one that hadn't stopped with the fall of the league, only waited to be revived. They didn't know if the world was ready for them, but they knew they were ready for the world. And deep down, each of them carried the same quiet certainty. A legacy doesn't end, as long as someone is willing to carry it. And that was the end of chapter 5, Between Ghosts and Promises, and this was a not as heavily emotional as the other ones, but it is kind of emotional. I need to take a shower after this one and also like wash my hair and stuff. So this is gonna be like the end of my recording session for today. And yeah, and guys, they are opening up to each other. This is so heartwarming. It's wholesome, heartwarming, but it also makes me want to cry. Anyways, now hope you enjoyed and see you in the next video if you see the next one, of course. But I will be finishing this series no matter what. May the AO3 if the AO3 curse strikes me, I will not go down easily. I literally begged my teachers to not send me back home in my first year of middle school, just so that I could take the test that I had that morning, and then they could send me back. But at last, they said I had a temperature of 40, like almost like 39 degrees Celsius, not Fahrenheit, and they said, "You're burning up. You're heading home right now." And so I did not do the exam. I was I was given like allowed to leave because even the strictest teacher in the school said, "No, you gotta leave. You are not taking this test because you are burning up and you are not in a good condition." And I was like, "Fine." Anyway, so yeah, even if the AO3 even if the AO3 curse strikes me down, you guys are going to still gonna get some like uploads for the following month or so, because I record it in bulk, just like how moms buy in bulk. Anyways, so yeah. Now I'm don't know what to say, but yeah. Now see you in the next one. And also, then this is After the Fall by uh by Innocent with one N _ reader. Bye.